Welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. I'm your host, Ray Whiting. With me, I have Bob Quinn, Zach Franciscus, and guess who's back? The
Yay!
lovely LeeAnn Lohman.
Happy to be back. Way
How
better
you doing?
than Texas.
Good. Texas.
Yeah, my mom. My mom lives in Austin.
How hot was Texas?
It was really, really freaking hot. And that's saying something considering I live in South Florida where it is also really, really hot. But the Texas weather, it's just different. I mean, we were up over 100 every day that I was there, and you don't get any rain. There's like no relief. Do you know what I mean? They don't really have trees. I mean, it's crazy hot. Too hot to do anything outside after 9 a.m.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, we're glad you're back because I'm looking to pick a fight with, a fight's going to take place. So let's get started. This is the menu for this week's episode. We're going to start off with Hard Knocks reaction. As you know, HBO, they're going to feature the entire AFC North division, including the Pittsburgh Steelers. Typically, HBO's Hard Knocks, they focus on one team per season. But this time, it's going to be the whole entire AFC North division. Again, this is something Pittsburgh don't really get into. They stay to themselves, and they, again, try to focus on the upcoming season. And I want you all to share your thoughts on this decision to be on HBO Hard Knocks. Ladies first.
I gotta say that I mean, look, I am often the one that feels like the team is subject to the inner disputes among the NFL where we get the short end of the stick and there's some conspiracy working against us. But if you didn't believe in conspiracy theories regarding the Steelers before this, I don't know how you don't believe in them now. We got hit with our schedule release with the toughest schedule you could possibly have, facing our whole division, which is the toughest division in football at the end of the season, and then find out that coincidentally that's going to be when Hard Knocks is also being filmed. I think that the NFL has wanted to have the Steelers on Hard Knocks for a long time. The rule was always that if you won a playoff game in the last 2 years, you didn't have to do Hard Knocks. You could say no. So the Steelers have always managed to be within that 2-year window and not have to do it. And, when they asked Mike Tomlin about it after OTAs, he made a joke. They said, well, what would you say if they asked you? And he was like, ask? Like, clearly they're not asking anybody. Like, clearly it's not optional. So I think that they got to work around here by bringing the whole division in and making the whole division do it. I will say, I think the one upside to this is I do think it might improve the way that some fans view Mike Tomlin. I think I think we will see his ratings improve. I think he's going to steal the show, whether he means to or not. And I think it's going to make him feel a lot more likable to Steelers fans as well as to football fans in general.
Zach?
Well, let's jump to Bob first, because I know I want to talk about the difficulty that it tends to bring up among the team, but I know Bob has something else he wants to throw in first before I get into that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's just kind of been this thing on social media the last few years. There's a script that everything's preordained by the NFL, and a lot of people are thinking, because like LeeAnn said, they have not been able to get their hooks into the Steelers the entire run of the show. It started in, I think it was 2001, and Baltimore was on, and the Steelers have never been on. So this was, and I don't think it's win a playoff game, because obviously we haven't won a playoff game in 7 years. I think it's just you make the playoffs every couple of years to do that one. So, from a scriptwriter perspective, yes, this is your way to get your hooks in by doing the AFC North. But, and I know Ray has talked about this a little bit, how and a lot of people feel, well, it's unfair. We got all these divisional games at the end of the year. And I listened to Mike Florio talk about it a little bit yesterday. The NFL may have done the Steelers a favor here by putting the division games in the second half of the year, because at the beginning of the year, while they're trying to figure things out against teams that are not in the division, maybe are not as familiar with the Pittsburgh defense as the divisional opponents would be, there's some, there's some benefit for the Steelers to have to wait to play teams that are really familiar with them for the second half of the season. And more importantly, I went back and looked at this. Since we started losing playoff games over the last 7 years, we're 29-11-1 against the AFC North. Actually, I think it's 29-12-1. We own that. I mean, down the stretch, I mean, the worst record we've had in the division in the last 7 years is 3-3. Most years we've been 4-2. A lot of years we've been 5-1. So if we pair that with a 7-2, let's say we go 4-2 and we go 7-2 in the first half, like we believe that we have to make the playoffs. Now we're 11-4 with games against Kansas City and Philadelphia. Even if we lose both of those games, 11-6, it's a good chance we can be in the mix for the division, but we should definitely be in the playoffs. And I know Zach wants to talk about this, but Joe Sarkey brought up the other day on his program that on Hard Knocks, and I think Mike Florio talked about this too. On Hard Knocks, they thrive on finding conflict, and or maybe even creating conflict. And the real question is with the Steelers, and Mike Tomlin might turn into a star, but who's going to be the conflict guy? And I know Zach has some thoughts about this. Zach, who do you think it's going to be?
Well, first off, I've seen a lot of stuff about. It kind of seems like we've been kidnapped, and everyone is just now accepting the fact that we're enjoying it. We're like, okay, well, we're kidnapped. We might as well make the best of this. And everyone's talking about how, people are going to see the best out of Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is apoplectic. Mike, and I just don't want to use the word apoplectic because it's a great word. His head has to be exploding because, LeeAnn, you were exactly right. That comment was on par for Tomlin. He has what's nothing to do with Hard Knocks. Why? Because all it is a distraction. To prepare for this, I went back to YouTube and I watched all of the old Hard Knocks. And what I realized is it was like watching a nature documentary. The fact of observing it changes what you're observing. It doesn't matter if you get involved, your camera's there. I'm worried about Najee, thinking that this might be his chance to, use this as a spotlight on him for the next team if the Steelers don't want him. We have too many people on 1-year deals, 1-year prove it things, a new offensive coordinator. I appreciate what Bob is saying that it because of how we do in the division and our success in that, it sets us up well for that. But you don't think it's going to be in the back of everyone's minds that there's this point where the season just becomes harder for no good reason? And I wanted to use so many other words I shouldn't use at that point to get our podcast censored. But it's going to be in the back of everyone's mind as we're putting together a new offense, as we're having a quarterback competition, real or not. It's there as we're trying to figure out the George Pickens and Riders. There's so much we're trying to figure out. Why bring this into it? Even if it's not going to happen till later on, Mike Tomlin is going to have to prepare the team for that. He is a veteran coach. He's going to want to get ahead of that, which means now he has to add extra stuff to his game planning. Nothing of this is good. And to top it all off, my last point, I went through all of the records of the teams. What's some of the best records you got? Like a 12-5? Is that what is that the height of what the Steelers are hoping for? Because that's the best that Hard Knocks can turn in. It's mostly losing records and unimpressive records, and that's because they had to battle the NFL season, opponents, referees, and now a camera crew. So it doesn't really stick in my mind about who's going to stand out and who's going to do this, mainly because I don't want it to happen in the first place. I'm going to be railing against this as it happens, especially if we start to lose games in that tough stretch of the season. I am going to blame the NFL solely. Because we set ourselves up for success. We did all the right things. Cam and Najee situation aside, why this? Did the NFL, the conspiracy with LeeAnn talked about, I'm all for right now. Because with the fines of Jane Harris and all this, the Steelers fans have felt like the NFL is against us for a while. If this doesn't prove it, I really don't know what.
I feel like you should be able to say no to this. So, like, I have a real issue with the fact that a team gets bullied into this. You know what I mean? And from everything I've heard, it's obviously about money. It's about money in the owners' pockets. But even still, I don't believe that the Rooneys would be so greedy that they would go against everything the organization kind of stands for to allow this. I mean, maybe that's Pollyanna of me, but I don't think so. I feel like there had to be some bigger thing where they got outvoted or the league as a whole decided or something like that. I just don't see the Roonies going that hard against, what's always been in place in our organization, where things are kind of handled behind closed doors. And then now you're going to try to put everything out into the light. It feels like a setup.
Well, as far as going against the NFL, though, I mean, look, last year we voted against the Thursday night flex scheduling. What happened? We got 2 Thursday night games for our trouble. So maybe, and let's face it, we've held them off for 23 years. I mean, that's a pretty good run. So I mean, and I do think the NFL, they have the rules in place with Hard Knocks that they've gone from a preseason Hard Knocks where the rules were. So at least we didn't have to go through all that to now this in-season stuff. I think it's just unfortunately going to be our turn. It's not a matter of, because Baltimore, Cincinnati's been to a Super Bowl. Baltimore was in the AFC Championship game. Cleveland, I think, plays professional football.
Well, you can't avoid it forever when you've got teams that are doing it for their 3rd time or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And now they're running 3 different versions of the show. I don't know how you avoid it forever.
I think some teams like it. I mean, maybe I think the Rams have been on 3 or 4 times or something. So
yeah,
if they really want to do it and expose their culture, go ahead. Or lack of culture, like I think the Jets last year. I mean, honestly, I've probably watched an hour of Hard Knocks in 23 years. I've seen occasional things where I kind of tune in, but I mean, it's behind the scenes of training camp. Guys get cut. Is there drama that a guy has to bring his playbook? I mean, let's face it. For all of us who've played football or all of us have been around the game for a long time, if it's training camp and the coach wants to see you, it's not a good thing.
This is my conspiracy theory on Hard Knocks. Yes, Tomlin is lovable. Everybody wants to know. I mean, the cameras are going to be on him, and I truly believe that. Again, given the fact that he has a 3-year contract, it's at this point to a lot of fans, it's Super Bowl or bust. If he doesn't, he's gone. So what is out there? What's next for Tomlin? Now, again, this is probably my.
We made a really quick jump from Tomlin's our coach to Tomlin's gone.
Wait a minute. But check this out. Here's my thing. If Fox is going to pay Tom Brady $375 million contract, $375 million on a 10-year contract, I'm sure that either Fox or ESPN or maybe CBS will probably give Tomlin maybe a good substantial.
Tomlin's not going anywhere.
As an analyst. If he doesn't coach again. If he doesn't coach again. Now, the downside to Hard Knocks, huh?
Yeah, he just signed an extension. He's not going anywhere.
I know he's not going anywhere, but what I'm saying is this Hard Knocks, whereas he's going to be in front of the camera even more outside of being on the sideline.
You think it's going to get him to catch a camera bug, and he's rather than coaching, he's going to want to be in front of the camera?
Right.
That's
got the camera bug.
Maybe if it was Sean McVay, but Mike Tomlin.
But now I think the downside is, we may have some divas on the roster that want to, kiki and everything in front of the camera and all that jazz and everything. That's my only knock on being on Hard Knocks. I mean, again, maybe it'll benefit, maybe it'll help the team, maybe it won't. But time will tell.
I was
curious
earlier. Hang on. Go ahead, Zach.
If you guys could switch and decide, would you want to have us as the training camp team or the in-season team? If we had to be one of the two, training camp.
Yeah, training camp.
NFL films, they do stuff during in-season anyway.
Because I feel like if you do training camp, they focus more on the poor guys that get cut and who's not going to make the team and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Which doesn't totally take the focus off of some of the bigger guys. But to me, when you're focusing on that in-season Hard Knocks, it's about the misery of the loss you just experienced and how terrible it is going in on, next day for practice and watching film. I mean, I remember even watching that when Miami did it, and it was miserable watching those guys walk in after losses. if it's
I
like
just thought of a huge possible downside that made my heart drop. So right now we have the Russell Wilson we want, the Russell Wilson from Seattle that doesn't have to be the savior and all that kind of stuff. We get to that point of the season. If Russell Wilson is starting to struggle and we're on the edge of Justin Fields or not, he is going to revert back to savior Russell Wilson again. And we can't have, and it will be Hard Knocks' fault. It's because he'll feel the pressure and the cameras will be in his face and everything making that.
Zach, I got a worst case scenario.
You have a worst case?
Well, I got an even worse case scenario for you. What if the conflict guy turns out to be T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick? Somebody that we. I would really be surprised by Minka, but there is a sneaking feeling about Cam and TJ that they're more me than we.
Cam, I see. Why TJ though? I don't get that from your perspective.
How can you be the all-time Pittsburgh Steelers leading sacker, one of the best pass rushers the NFL has ever seen, and your teammates do not want you as the defensive captain? I'm not saying it is a bad.
Is that really the case, though, or is it the case that that's just really not TJ's personality, and he's surrounded by these other guys who are sort of natural leaders, and so they've kind of slotted into that role? I mean, we've got other good guys that play that aren't necessarily the defensive captain. It's it'd be like making Isaac Seumalo the captain in the offense. Do you know what I mean? He's a good guy. He's been on a Super Bowl winning team, but he just doesn't have that personality. I thought it was because TJ just isn't. He's more that lead by example rather than, like Cam.
Like other lead by example guys get named captain. It's just TJ's always had a little bit of a me about him, and he's worked on it. But especially early in his career, there was a lot of rumors about him being, I'm out for mine. I hope the team wins, but I'm out for mine. I don't think it's a bad thing. Every great player is a me guy.
Yeah,
you can't point to a great player who's not a me guy. Lawrence Taylor wanted sacks. He wanted to impact the game. Sure. Troy Polamalu, a more soft-spoken, beloved guy you will never find. But on the field, everybody knows he freelanced. He did what he wanted. He did what he thought was right. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying, what if by seeing behind the scenes that maybe TJ is a little bit arrogant. Maybe Cam is very petty. And I can make the case he is. He's a petty guy.
Cam thing.
But
TJ, I completely.
I'm not saying he is.
Every player needs that me guy, but I think with TJ the me is different. I think I talked about this before. That with TJ the me comes from him not having the people that Polamalu had around him. And leadership around that time. TJ understood it was him and no one else, and the team needed him to be something special. I see him as more of that relief pitcher that has to sit by himself in between innings to make sure no one gets in his head. No one says, oh, that guy's antisocial. They say he needs that to make sure when he's back out there, he is in the zone. I think that's the kind of me, if you want to call it a me, I think TJ knows what the team needs from him, and he knows if he was put in that kind of a position, like you said, LeeAnn, it wouldn't work out well for him or the other team. So he needs to remove himself from maybe the Antonio Brown of it all, maybe the Mike Tomlin of it, of certain areas of the rah-rah situation that he doesn't mesh well with. He had to remove himself, so he didn't get wrapped up in it, and he could stay at a level that he had to. That's the only me that I can see.
Okay, Zach, if Cam retires tomorrow and they're electing a new defensive captain, who do you think wins?
Minka? I think, but I don't think that's a disparage on TJ. Mm-hmm. I think that would be. I think they would go to TJ, and I think or it's happened before, and TJ's like, "Thank you, I appreciate this. You don't want me in this position, and here's." Right. I feel there's that transparency, and there's the self-awareness that TJ has, not just because of who he is.
I actually think that's a leadership behavior to be able to say, like, this isn't my role. You know what I mean?
And you cannot tell me that if TJ had a me thing, that JJ wouldn't be on his ass every day saying, you cut that out. you get that out of your system right now. That's not what the
I think
NFL needs.
JJ
Right
has the new thing too.
Yeah, I was going to say
I
that.
do think it comes with the territory of being like the alpha dog, being the best. Do you know what I mean? The kind of work that these guys have to put into their craft. I mean, that is a selfish thing, you know, the time away from your family, the time you invest into it. I mean, it's ultimately why JJ retired a little bit early. You know, he wanted to maintain his body's not falling apart, you know, and he's got a kid now and he wants to spend time with his wife and his child. And, you know, when you're TJ Watt or JJ Watt and you have to get your 11 hours of sleep or whatever it is a day that they do, and then work out for the rest of the time. I mean, that's, you know, it's hard to do anything. I think that comes with the mindset of somebody who's an excellent player. If I were Mike Tomlin, though, I would be telling these guys that now more than ever, be careful about what you say, because they are going to take whatever you say and take it out of context and make you look bad.
We want to be boring.
They want TJ Watt to be a horrible guy. They're going to want, you know, Najee Harris to be this jerk that some people think he is. They're going to want Russell Wilson to be a diva. They're going to want all these things because that's what the show's really turned into, is this, like, the drama behind the scenes of football, you know, like every other reality show. And that's how they get their ratings. You can't fault them for it, but we can't put it to them.
How fake can Russell Wilson be?
It's just like WWE, the heroes, and then you got the heels.
Yeah.
There you go with that script again, Ray.
All right. Antonio Brown is at it again.
Shocking.
Guys, you know, again, I've said this when it first came out. You saw my text message. This grinds my gears. What the hell is going on? And you know what? I'm going to speak last. Bob, you go first. AB.
I mean, I don't know what is more delusional about what he has said over the last few days. I mean, look, do I understand him maybe being a little upset about Cordarrelle Patterson getting 84? Okay, but let's face it, the guys didn't necessarily make the team, but guys have worn Jack Lambert's number, guys wore Jack Ham's number, guys wore I don't think anybody ever wore 12 again. But there's been some big numbers. 88. Pat's wearing 88 right now.
Yeah.
Antoine Randall wore 82. I mean, is it, you know, do I understand his point a little bit on that one? That's the one I'm most likely to say, no, you're not entitled, but I understand why you might be upset. The Bruce Arians stuff really, really irks me. He played for Bruce Arians for 2 seasons. First year of the Super Bowl, he didn't play very much. He was a 6th-round draft pick. He was behind Mike Wallace and Hines Ward and Heath Miller on the depth chart and targets. Emmanuel Sanders actually got the next amount of targets. He only had 39 catches. He was a 6th-round draft pick. He did play some. His second year in the league under Arians, he led the team in targets. He only finished 70 yards behind Mike Wallace for the season. He had 3 less catches. He had 10 more targets. I mean, what? Bruce Arians held him back? Yeah, I guess he did the first year. He didn't let him on the field. And I got a question. If AB's watching, feel free to chime in, put it in the comments. If Ben Roethlisberger was so important to your career, if Ben Roethlisberger was the guy who fought for you to get on the field, what the heck were you doing trashing him on the way out of town in 2018, talking about how, oh, Ben is holding me back? I mean, that's your thanks? That's your loyalty? Get out of here.
Oh, Bob, with
you
the
can come on the podcast, AB, and refute that if you'd like to say it.
Yes.
He can come on the show and we'll be happy to hear him out. I got to say, I'm not going to say a whole lot because I really agree with everything that Bob said. But to me, this is part of the AB spiel where he just wants to talk and he wants to have something to say. And I think at this point now, he even refutes stuff he said in the past. It doesn't even make sense. Like you said, he's talking about how Ben was so, you know, paramount to his career, but just previously, you know, trashed Ben's name. So to me, it's just him just talking. I don't even know if he realizes what he says anymore. He's like that chronic storyteller that can't keep his story straight.
Zach?
That's true. The main thing with me, and I like the word you used, Bob, delusion. I think it was twice, at least twice. He said things along the lines of if his career wouldn't have ended or he wouldn't have been held back or all this kind of stuff, he would have approached Jerry Rice numbers. Does he ever look at any stat sheet ever? The dude is 25th all time in yards, tied for 21st in receptions, and tied for 26 in touchdowns, with Hines Ward having 2 more touchdowns than him.
And whose fault is it that he didn't make it last longer? Like, whose fault is it?
Exactly. None of us were the ones that we didn't run onto the field and take his jersey off of him in Tampa and then run off. No, he did that. That was also, and if I was Jerry Rice, I would be mad. I would look him like, what? Excuse me? So the delusion is, you have to almost laugh it off, but then it's sad at the same time because I see there's a deterioration happening, Leeann. I see what you're saying, and you can tell it's happening because he can't keep the facts straight about what he said before. And Bob, I think that might play into it. He legitimately might not remember that he trashed Ben. In his mind, if that's literally a gap at the moment, then he's kind of confused on why people aren't sure why he's supporting Ben. So that legitimately could be happening because we know there's something to that level going on, and he obviously doesn't have the support system. We can see with whatever's happening on CT ESPN. The fact that exists lets him know he's not taking it seriously. So you have to shrug it off, and you just have to hope that Hard Knocks doesn't bring him anywhere near it. Oh, goodness, my heart sank again. Oh, goodness.
I said this to you guys earlier that I've always been able to separate AB on the field from AB's off the field antics. Do you know what I mean? I am not somebody that hates him or disparages what he did on the field because of anything he's done since then. But it is a reality that sometimes your off-field behaviors interfere with your ability to produce on the field. And ultimately, that's what happened to him. And there's no one to blame for that but himself. I mean, do I think some bad things maybe happened? I mean, sure, I don't know. I wasn't there. But things happen all the time in everybody's lives, and you have to be able to overcome the adversity. And you look at somebody like Le'Veon Bell, who's now able to say, I really screwed up. I should have just stayed in Pittsburgh where I was. And Antonio Brown has that same option. Do you know what I mean? He had that same ability, and it was all about the me and the him, and yeah, I mean, he just fell apart. I think it's sad. I think he's really unstable. And I think it's sad.
You look at it, I mean, he basically had 800 catches, 11,000 plus yards at age 30. It was last season with Ben, 2018, when he quit on the team.
Yeah.
And in the 3 years following that, 19, 20, 21, he catches basically for him about 3/4 of a season, 90 balls, about 1,000 yards. Tom Brady kind of resurrected him. Bruce Arians put him back on his team. Mr. I Hate Bruce Arians.
Right. Did nothing for me.
Exactly. I mean, and he should still be playing. He's only 35. So let's face it. If he had just somehow miracle gone to the Raiders and just been a good citizen, or gone to the Patriots, and this is what really scared me. If he had just gone to the Patriots and not trashed Robert Kraft, could you imagine what that would have looked like the last couple of years with Tom Brady, AB, and Gronk up there when they had no receivers? That could have really been something special. He had a case. I mean, but one thing AB always forgets about Jerry Rice is he had Jerry Rice's first half of his career. Jerry Rice played till he was 40-something and had a great second half of his career.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, AB, I hate to tell you, were you on track to be Jerry Rice? Maybe.
Quit a decade too soon.
Yeah, but you had a long way to go.
Yeah.
Okay. My take. Buckle up. Here we go. Do you remember the scene in Natural Born Killers? They were around the campfire, and the guy explained to Woody Harrelson about the old lady and the snake.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that scene?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's cold outside, and the snake is out there shivering, and the old lady brings him in, and she takes care of him, in front of warm fire and everything, and just nurse the snake back to health. Until one day, this lady reached down, and the snake bit her. And the old lady said, after all I've done for you, you do this to me? And I'm going to quote what was said in Natural Born Killers. Bitch, you knew I was a snake to begin with. My thing is with AB, okay, Ben Roethlisberger brought you out there because, again, he lobbied for you, needs you as an ex-player. Look what happened. It turned out to be a great success. You know, you got your contracts and everything. You know, you got carte blanche as far as team meetings and stuff like that. You know, Mike Tomlin never punished you. And again, it got to the point where enough was enough. So bye-bye, AB with the Steelers. Now, you spend one day in with the Raiders. That was done. Then you go to the Patriots, and Tom Brady even lobbied for you. So here we go, another episode of the old lady and the snake. He lobbied for you. Now you got your a ring. Now, AB is again he's backtracking as far as what he is saying, and try to be all nice and try to be smooth about it. Try to be fair. But again, this situation here with AB is enough. I don't know if AB is trying to save face for somebody else, and I think he's at the end of his rope right now because he pissed away a football league. He pissed away other avenues for him for success, and now again he's trying his best. Or I think he's on his last leg. He's trying his best to strike up something good for him, to maybe make some more money. Because I don't know what he's doing now. I don't think he's making any money. Maybe he's doing some appearances. But AB right now, man, and if you listen to AB.
He's an influencer. Right. He's got all kinds of CT ESPN. He's got all his stuff for social media.
AB profitable. Other than like Twitter, I know he wanted to do podcasts and stuff, but I haven't seen. Did that come to fruition that I just haven't seen it?
No, I think he gets decent engagement from his.
He gets paid a good chunk of money to be on people's podcasts, and I know because I know somebody who asked him to come on their podcast, and the booking fee was outrageous. Outrageous.
Okay.
AB, I'll say this: if you see this, if you know better, do better. Come on, man.
Well, I think there's a good way to sum up what AB kind of felt, and I think we get to use this for the very first time.
The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
Yeah. And that's the end of AB's career.
Yeah. You know that kid that when you were in elementary school that acted naughty in class and it didn't matter what the teacher did or said, they acted up more and more. That's how I see Antonio Brown is any attention is good attention, and he's going to take what he gets. And because he gets attention, he's got people pouncing on him about how CTESPN isn't appropriate. He's got people laughing at the jokes that Bob and I don't think he even writes for himself. Do you know what I mean? I think that all of these things, it's attention, and that's what he's always wanted. He's always wanted attention, and he's getting it. He's getting it from his predictions about what players are going to do. I mean, all of these things are getting him a lot of attention, a lot of retweets.
And in fairness, he was right about some of them.
Yeah, he's been right a lot, which is a little makes you wonder.
Yeah, you have to imagine. I'm guessing he has a lot of direct numbers to different players, all. But I'm guessing not every player has the right inside track, so he probably is getting legitimate responses from people, but he's just not filtering them well enough to get them all right.
Right. Can you imagine giving the secret that's going on in your career to Antonio Brown of all people? He calls you up and he's like, "Hey man, just wondering what's going on with your career," and then you're like, "Nobody's supposed to know this." But
you don't tell anyone, AB.
Don't tell anyone.
Or because he torched the league and his reputation and everything else, and kind of, the guys around him saying, "That's right, AB, you're right. Everybody else is wrong." Wonder how many of the other athletes are like, "Hey, I can have Antonio Brown say what I really think, and nobody will blame me."
You know what? You're right. He's like a mouthpiece for these guys, and he loves it. So if he can get some inside dirt and he can put it all out there, that to him is just icing on the cake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, AB, come on, man. Again, if you know better, do better. Guys, GM Omar Khan, did he finally make a mistake? This is going to be an interesting topic here.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, it's kind of been floated around this week that he pulled the trigger too fast on Diontae Johnson. Hey, not that it was a bad idea to get rid of him, but maybe it was a bad idea not to have a succession plan in place for Diontae Johnson. A lot of us thought it was going to be through the draft. There's been mixed reports on Roman Wilson. He started out really well. A lot of people say, hey, look, that's zipping across the field. He's very noticeable. There's separation. But then when it kind of switched to, okay, you're the number 2 receiver and you got to run different intermediate routes, then it was all of a sudden, well, he's struggled a little bit. He's a rookie. He's going to struggle. But now, we've kind of revived the Ayuk talk and some of the other stuff that's been going on. So, that do I think he made a mistake trading Diontae Johnson? No. Do I think he made a mistake pulling the trigger without either a free agent or a trade deal in place? Remains to be seen. There's a lot of pressure on Roman Wilson. And I'm just going to say this. If you're counting on Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin to be the real number 2, I'm sorry, folks. You're wrong. If that becomes a situation, we're going to have a problem.
Okay, Bob. So here's my question to you: Why did the Steelers draft Calvin Austin?
Well, I mean, they drafted him in the Pickens draft, and it was Kevin Colbert who drafted him. I think Calvin Austin has some value, but I mean, let's face it, he's 5'9", and he was super fast, but he had a foot injury that kept him out for a year. I think he's still fast, but let's really be frank here. When Calvin Austin stepped on the field last season, you knew one of two things was going to happen. It was a jet sweep, or they were going to try to throw it way downfield to Calvin Austin because of the Raiders game.
Yeah.
He's a telegraph player. He comes in, he's a gadget guy. Do I think he could be more? Yes. He couldn't have been more under the previous offensive coordinator. Maybe Arthur Smith can do something with him, but let's be realistic. Arthur Smith isn't known for his third wide receiver.
But with his speed, he was also somebody to me that was a I don't want to say a safe, but a reasonable gamble. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As a draft pick, he was a reasonable gamble. You weren't getting him somewhere ridiculous like the first round or something. Do you know what I mean? So I think it made some sense to take a risk on somebody with that much speed. If it doesn't pay out, it doesn't pay out.
But what Colbert seemed like he loved speed. Speed would like put dollar sign. Hey, Archer Colbert.
He loved Dre Archer. I was just going to say his name there.
Yep.
I mean, when I saw speed, I got excited, and the reason that name sticks out to me is that's what kind of took the shine off speed for me when it came to the draft. I'm like, cool, you're fast. I've seen what that does.
At least Calvin Austin got on the field.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. To me, like I say, it's Omar. The Diontae Johnson trade, guys. Did he make a mistake? No, he did not. Because Diontae, it got to the point with him. I mean, his mouth in the locker room outside, after the game. I think it got to people. I mean, as far as front office, I think it got to the nerves because Diontae Johnson should have never gone as far as. Oh, Kenny Pickett's my guy. Now all of a sudden, I'm sorry. When Kenny Pickett is the quarterback, you're saying in the locker room, well, Mitch is my guy. Mitch Trubisky. I like Mitch Trubisky. And comes Mitch.
He got no fight with Mitch Trubisky.
But you're right, and he did. But at one point, he praised him. So then all of a sudden, I mean, you're going. I mean, you're going one way, then you go another way. So Diontae Johnson, to me, I think his attitude in the locker room was kind of a cancer, and I think at that particular point, I think Pittsburgh said, you know what, off to Carolina.
Ray, it was necessary, but was it too fast? Because we're sitting here right now and we're weeks away, and it seems every single day is 24 hours of what wide receivers the Steelers going to get. So did all that bring it on?
But here's the thing is that it can't be too fast if you feel like it's the right decision for your team. It doesn't matter whether you do it Thursday or you do it in 3 months. If you feel it's the right decision for your team to move on from a player, and I won't go as far as Ray and call him a cancer, but I do think he was a bit disillusioned. And I think when you have disillusioned players, the best thing you can do is move on from them. And I think it's good for the players and it's good for the team. And it doesn't necessarily reflect badly on either one of them. Sometimes fits just aren't good fits anymore. And I think that's okay. Like, we need to acknowledge that, like, it's okay. So, I wish him well in Carolina. I hope it's a good thing for him, and I hope he thrives there. I don't have any ill will towards him. But as far as being too soon, I just don't see how that's possible. If you feel like this is what your team needs to do, then it shouldn't matter when you let somebody walk away. And then you have to just decide what the next best step for your team is. And whether that's somebody they're working on, whether that's wait until camp or, the last day or whatever it is, do you know what I mean? Or Pat Freiermuth is your second wide receiver, whatever that is. I think it is, I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I don't think it was a mistake.
That's a good point, LeeAnn. I firmly believe this whole second wide receiver is a little bit overblown.
Yeah.
Because I strongly believe Pat is going to be the number 2.
Yeah. I do too.
A lot of people are bringing up the Alex Highsmith money and the reports about, we wanted a trade before the draft. And I've even, we talked about it before we started this episode, that some people are saying the Steelers were all in on the Aiyuk thing. I am really sorry. I know Omar Khan is a confident man. I know he's aggressive, but I can't see him going all out, making the pitch, having the thing ready, getting rebuffed by the 49ers. And then just saying, you know what? Yeah, we're cool. I'm not going to be, and then just sitting here without a plan for all these weeks. I can't see that happening because it doesn't line up. Either it didn't really happen to that extent, and the Steelers reached out to multiple teams along with the 49ers, and because it was Aiyuk, we're only hearing about the 49ers. Maybe not 15 teams, Bob, like I said before, but at least a couple teams we reached out to.
LeeAnn, jump in on that. Jump in right there. Jump in, please.
Me?
Yeah.
I agree with Zach. I mean, I just don't buy it. I mean, I think we've heard most of the insiders say that there was legitimate interest in Aiyuk, and I think that's probably true. Do you know what I mean? But I said this earlier that I think there's legitimate interest in a lot of players, and I think as a GM, you sprinkle that interest all over the league and see who's biting. Do you know what I mean? I don't believe for a second that Omar Khan sits in his office prior to the offseason and thinks, okay, well, there's these two targets, Brandon Aiyuk and Courtland Sutton or whoever, and that's who I'm fixated on, and that's all I'm going to think about. I think he chats with these GMs all over the league and gets an idea of who they're willing to let go of and who they're not, and what that would look like, and then he kind of formulates a plan from there. So I think even if they did have, he called John Lynch and had a legitimate conversation about Aiyuk, I don't ever think he had all his eggs in that basket. Do you know what I mean? Because the Steelers, he's going to be expensive, and the Steelers are just not going to. I just don't see him putting out that kind of money for a wide receiver too.
Well, one thing too, when you talk about this, Kaboli was on the Joe Starkey show this week, and they did their free association. Which, if you haven't ever listened to that segment on Joe Starkey's show, it's really funny. You should do it. He does it with Kaboli every week. But he asked him, "Do you think we trade for Brandon Aiyuk?" No. Do you think we trade for Deebo Samuel? No. Do you think we trade for Courtland Sutton? No. Do you think we stand pat and go into the season with what we got? No. And then Starkey said, well, who's the guy then? Who are you thinking? And Kaboli came back with whoever gets cut on August 29th.
Yep. He said the same thing. Kaboli said the same thing on the fans' morning show yesterday, that he thinks that the team will find somebody else, but the fans are fixated on these big names, and we're not seeing past that. And he sees it as maybe somebody you've heard of, but not necessarily one of those top elite wide receivers that keep getting discussed. You know what I mean? So he thinks there's somebody out there that's still coming the Steelers' way. We just don't know who that is yet.
Well, and LeeAnn, I don't know how you feel about this. We talked about this a little bit the last couple of weeks. $125 billion is the reported amount now for cap space next year. The trend is now everybody's paying 2 wide receivers big money. Yeah. Miami, San Francisco, if they even if they don't re-sign Aiyuk, they're paying Jawan Jennings a lot of money. Yeah, give him a nice raise. So I have made the point, and I'm curious to see what you think, that if you get Brandon Ayuk for 4 years and $120 million, and let's say you end up signing Pickens next year to 4 years and $100 million, that could end up being a bargain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
I agree, and I think that Omar Khan has a better grasp of that kind of long-term money mentality than Kevin Colbert did. I just see him. I mean, from what we've seen the past 2 years, him analyzing those situations better and being willing to take a little bit of a risk, where to me it almost felt like at times Colbert was so literal with the wallet, you know what I mean, that he couldn't think about any flexibility with moving money around. I mean, the reality is that the NFL is never going to be the New York Yankees. We have a cap that we have to follow, but if you really want somebody, there's almost always a way to get that done. And I think that the Steelers are very lucky with our, finances on our quarterback situation and some other positions. And I think we have no choice but to look into paying a wide receiver, whether it's this year or next.
Final point I'll bring on this. I'm wondering if, just because this seems to be a fan thing, if this is some Matt Canada fallout, because we're looking at it wrong. We've been looking at someone to help us rise above the inadequacies of the offense, to help us win in spite of the offense. So we need those big guys. Oh, George Pickens is here. He can help us win in spite of Canada, rather than thinking who can work in our system like a lot of the other offenses do. So we're a traumatized fan base right now because of Matt Canada. We have to adjust our thinking as far as what a real offensive system in the NFL is, and that is what the 49ers have, where you have a quarterback who is Mr. Irrelevant, who comes in and because of a good system and because of a good coaching staff and all, he hits the ground running and the weapons around. We didn't have that. Everyone was trying to play in spite of. Everyone knew the play calls were bad. It was backyard football at its worst. So I kind of feel a little bit of the Canada fallout from how we're all reacting to this.
I would agree with that, Zach, but I mean, when we look at Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, we look at Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, we start to look, the trend is you're going to pay two guys. I mean, do I like it?
Passing league.
Yeah, it's a passing league.
Whether you like it or not, even if our run game is strong.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have somebody that, now look, if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce could be a 1-2, could Pickens and Freiermuth be a 1-2? Yes, but those guys are both up for contracts. I mean, if that happens, what are we going to have to pay those guys? So I would.
If that happened, will we get into that weird, was it Jimmy Graham? Will we get into that weird Jimmy Graham area where it's like, pay me as a wide receiver, even though I'm a tight end kind of thing? And then we
I remember
get
that.
Le'Veon Bell flashbacks.
Yeah.
Well, I think you could more get into the Kittle Kelce debate. If Pat goes out this year in his first year with a real quarterback since Ben, and if he gets 1,000 yards and catches 65 passes and scores 10 touchdowns, what do you think he's going to fetch on the open market? I mean, tight ends are getting paid too.
Yeah, more than ever.
If they're getting paid more than running backs too, folks.
I was just going to say that, more than running backs.
Yep. Yeah. If Steelers end up leaning fully like you're saying, Bob, and we do pay those two receivers, Najee does not stand a chance to remain on this team. Because that's where the money will go, and he's not going to take that big of a pay cut just to be on the Steelers.
So does that lead us to a really good question about it? If it's not Ayuk, then who is it?
Absolutely.
That's a very good, because everyone's stuck in Ayuk, but there's other options out there that are better, that could be better, more feasible. Because who? I know no one's really said this one. Is Ayuk a system guy? Who knows? So
I believe that in this case here, I believe, as you said earlier, Pittsburgh is going to wait until after the 53-man roster comes out, see who's out there, and then maybe go for a two. See what's out there, the best two out there.
I don't believe there's going to be a two available on August 29th. I hate to contradict Kaboli there, but I mean, if you're getting cut 2 or 3 days before, I think the salary cap, stuff, unless somebody goes into camp as a highly paid number 2, and all of a sudden some rookie or some second or third year guy, hey, you know what? I can pay that guy $4 million. I don't need to pay you 15. Bye-bye. And then that kind of guy hits the street. I think if we're hoping that a miracle type of deal happens like it happened for cornerback a few years ago, Zach knows who I'm talking about, then yeah, sure. But You think that kind of guy's going to be available?
I think they're going to have their ear to the ground. They're going to have some idea of who's facing getting cut. I think that GMs will say, oh, I know the Steelers need a wide receiver, and we're pretty sure we're going to cut so-and-so, do you know what I mean? And call Omar Khan and give him a heads up that somebody's maybe getting released. And then they'll be right there, with the phone pressing the guy's number the second that he leaves the coach's office.
Well,
I don't think they'll wait till the last day.
So I agree, and I like that Bob led into that because there's starting to be a nice little trend where the Steelers kind of grab people from other AFC North teams, and we're like, hey, do better here with us. We got Patrick Queen here, Joe Hayden, who I did not. I was kind of unfazed by the Joe Hayden signing, and then when he got here, I was like, wait a second. And there was this resurgence in his career, and then he became a Steeler more than a Brown, and I love that transition. So why not Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
I mean, Amari Cooper is holding out right now. A lot of people say, he is a loyal Brown, but he wants something the Browns don't seem willing to give him right now. And I think when a lot of people say the name Amari Cooper, no one really gets the consistency. This is a really consistent receiver, and not just consistent over 3 teams in his career. A lot of times when a receiver is on his 3rd team, he starts to go. He's had 2 of the best seasons in his career over the past. He said over 2,400 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2022 and 2023 combined. And since 2019, his worst year, 865 yards. That's a good wide receiver too for us. Multiple 1,000-yard seasons with 3 different teams, and literally 3 days ago just turned 30. So right at that cusp where it's just so many positives when you look at that, and he's a little disgruntled. And what I've seen from Omar Khan and from the Steelers will work. Patrick Queen could even be brought in to say, hey, it worked with me. Grass is greener. I don't know if anybody saw the amazing Twitter content that Patrick Queen is putting out of just him watering the lawn.
I only wish it had been a response to my article and not Depot's, but that's okay.
My only concern about this
Patrick Green, if you're listening to this, you can always go back and repost LeeAnn's article from Steeler Nation on that. Just so you know, we do source better. But I like Amari Cooper because I think Amari Cooper would work well with Mike Tomlin. And what I like is the Pickens thing is huge. Amari Cooper, when he came in, he had that Pickens feel about him. And I think a lot of that was the Oakland culture, the black hole, the wind baby kind of thing. And he fed a little bit into that. But he's been through that, and he's consistent. And he's talked about as nothing but a good teammate. And Pickens needs to know how to get from where Pickens is now to where Amari Cooper is now. Because Pickens has the consistency so far, and he was better than Diontae Johnson over the last 2 seasons. So I'm fine with that. So bring in Cooper.
Exact. To play devil's advocate on this right here, as far as bringing a receiver, as we have done in the past, get players within the division. Remember Boykin that came from Baltimore? He never panned out. So that's my only downside to doing that.
You remember Larry Ogunjobi who did?
But yeah, you can't.
We're talking about in the realm of receivers.
Was Miles Boykin? Where was he picked? Miles Boykin wasn't first, was he?
I would argue that Amari Cooper's in a different stratosphere than Miles Boykin.
Oh,
that's what I was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but
Boykin was a Claypool teammate at Notre Dame, so
Andy's
Boykin was a good role player. He knew what was expected of him. He did what he was supposed to do, which sometimes it did kind of hurt us in the games. But when he came to Pittsburgh, it was just he done nothing. He was just taking up a jersey.
The difference, I think, Miles Boykin was brought in to compete for wide receiver 4 or 5, where Amari Cooper comes in, he's 1B. So that's the big difference to me.
Actually, Zach, let me ask you a quick question real quick. And before I say this, I just want to say, I'm going to preface this by saying Cam Hayward, in his infinite wisdom, floated the idea that he would be willing to go to the Cleveland Browns.
And that I do not forgive.
I'm sorry, and I've talked a lot the last couple of weeks about how upset I've been with some of Cam Hayward's antics. But let me ask you a question, Amari Cooper, okay, because he's holding out. Cam's unhappy with his contract. would you trade Cam Hayward straight up for Amari Cooper right now? The 8 games or so that Cam missed last year, was our run defense really that much better when he came back? I don't think it was.
Statistically, I don't know. I felt it. It seemed to me that there was a noticeable something missing. But I don't know if that was all Cam. But statistically, I don't know. I don't think we took too much of a hit.
Like the year before, TJ was almost a 10-point difference. The games he played versus the games he didn't.
He's a competitor and he wants to play. I just think that if we'd heard this from certain players, nobody would have batted an eye. Would have been like, oh, there's so and so up to their silly shenanigans. You know what I mean? Running their mouth. But I think from Cam Hayward, it was so unexpected that I think that we're almost taking it very personally. Do you know what I mean? And just didn't expect him to make a comment like that.
Which is why I say, you know what, take it on a year-by-year basis.
So ignoring
exactly the opposite of what Cam Hayward wants, though. So I mean, I don't know how that works, but that is exactly opposite to what Cam Hayward wants. What Cam Hayward wants is a little bit of a guarantee for the next 2 or 3 years. And so I mean, I don't know how the Steelers and him find that happy middle, but he would be stupid to agree to a year-to-year contract. You might as well just retire.
But now, here's the question: who holds the upper hand?
Well, quickly before that, let's jump back. Speaking of a happy middle, we haven't heard what receivers the other two want.
I don't want to go too far down the Cam Hayward trail. I want Bob to go next.
Yeah,
I want Bob to go next.
Okay, so let's talk about my guy. Number one, my guy is on the trade block, Treylon Burks. He's a first-round draft pick, 2 years removed. Is he has he had a great career? No, but let's face it. The Tennessee Titans traded A.J. Brown, and this is the guy they picked to replace him. So he never played with Arthur Smith, but he's 6'2", he's 225. He has some skills. The knock on him is he's not a great route runner, but if you're going to do the crossing routes, the over the middle stuff, I mean, Roman Wilson is kind of rumored to be demonstrating that he can handle that. The things he's struggling with are the intermediate and deep routes, and Burks has shown that he has ability down the field. So opposite Pickens, could he at least draw the interest of the defense while Freiermuth works over the middle? I think there's value. And I also think a guy only being 24 years old, and let's face it, after Arthur Smith left Tennessee, that offense went south real quick. So do I think Arthur Smith could turn him into A.J. Brown? Not A.J. Brown, but I do think he could make him a solid, serviceable number 2A, 2B. I love him way more than I love Van Jefferson.
Okay, so here's my question to you, Bob, about Treylon Burks. As it was stated earlier, you look at that GP1, Pat maybe number 2. So do you think Treylon Burks?
But Pat's not going to line up out at number 2 wide receiver.
Right.
He's going to be the number 2 guy in targets.
Right. But the thing is, do you feel that Pittsburgh is going, in this case here, in Treylon Burks, he's going for youth as opposed to experience?
It's not so much youth. This is a guy who's available and who's on the trade block. Dallas is rumored to be interested. There's 5 or 6 teams rumored to be in on him. You know, if you're looking at it, if you're going to take the tact, which I don't necessarily agree with, Ayuk's too expensive. We'd have to give up too much capital. And no, we can't do that because, the Steelers 20 years ago didn't pay people. Okay, if you ignore the reality of the salary cap and the current state of the NFL, okay, fine. Treylon Burks is also kind of the traditional second-tier free agent before Omar Khan that we really look for. So do I love the idea of a trade target who's he's not 4 years down the road. He was hurt his first year. He was hurt his second year. He has shown flashes. Yeah. And from an expense standpoint, I think he's going to be pretty cheap. I think 4th, 5th round pick, you could probably get him. Titans probably want a little more. You know, would I go a 3rd on him? Probably not. Would I go a 4th on him? Absolutely. Based on what we currently have, because I think he immediately jumps up to 2A, 2B with Roman Wilson.
Interesting.
I agree.
Really low risk for, and I think if he checks off enough of those boxes, the size, speed, a couple intangibles, does he fit our system? How many years has he been in the league? Did he play
2.
for Arthur Smith?
2 years.
No,
Or no?
he came
No,
the
he
year
just
after.
missed him.
Post
Yeah.
Arthur.
Just missed him.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
All right. So my guy. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say if I didn't know if there was remnants of Arthur Smith left in the Titans offense from when he was there that might intrigue him into coming to Pittsburgh to be a part of what he missed. So just
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, so my guy that I picked is Jahan Dotson. I really did kind of have my eye on Treylon Burks. What I liked about him is that, like Bob said, that he's somebody that's available. But in the absence of him, I like Jahan Dotson, who's currently with the Commanders. He, again, like Burks, is only 24. He was a 16th overall pick in 22 from Penn State. And I think that he's somebody that in Arthur Smith's offense could partner with Pickens, line up across from him and give Russell Wilson 2 like outstanding pass catchers, you know what I mean, to give him options. During his 2 seasons with the Commanders, he's had 1,041 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. So he's got potential. He's not necessarily been blowing the roof off, but he has been in Washington. He really expected when he came into the league, I think, to have a bigger impact. And he's kind of living in Terry McLaurin's shadow in Washington. And so I have a feeling that he would not be opposed to trying to go somewhere else. I know there's a lot of talk about their new quarterback, Jane Daniels, and him working with them, but you still got McLaurin. None of that changes. So he's kind of due to have this breakout year. He better fits the Steelers' budget, than one of these other guys, Cortland Sutton or Ayuk, so I think he better fits in that. I also think that he's a better fit across from Pickens, where he's not somebody that's going to come in and immediately dominate Pickens or take Pickens' role away from him, which is some of what I worried about with Ayuk, that he creates this friction in the wide receiver room, and so I think that Pickens is feeling like big man on campus right now, and I think that might be good for him. So I think this gives him somebody that's more, his equal or a little bit even below him, that he can work with, and I hope that would be some way that help kind of Pickens' maturity level a little bit.
Okay, LeeAnn, here's my question to you. So Jahan Dotson, again, you speak highly of him. Let's say George Pickens go down. Do you believe that Jahan Dotson is mature enough to be the one?
I mean, I think he could step in if he had to. I think we've got other, mature players that are on that team that are going to, as wide receivers, with Van Jefferson and some of these other guys that can take over the maturity thing in the room. I think we're already planning that with nobody there but Pickens right now. So I do have a concern that if Pickens goes down, and whether we have Jahan Dotson or somebody else, do you know what I mean? Who steps up as that number 1 wide receiver? But I think that's the reality on most teams. Do you know what I mean? You lose your first string guy, and could be a bit of a drop off between that and your second.
Yeah, and let's face it, if Pickens goes down, unless we go get some Terry McLaurin, right. Brandon Ayuk, it's a catastrophic injury for the Steelers. It's huge. Yeah, and I want to say something. Jahan Dotson, I love that guy. He's awesome. I mean, if you watch him when he's healthy, and Washington has used him over the last couple of years, he's more advanced as a receiver than Treylon Burks, who I like.
Yes.
I think it would cost a lot more to get him, but then again, the Commanders got new ownership. Maybe we could get him.
The Commanders are a freaking train wreck, man. They love to give players away for nothing and then buy old Steelers that should have retired 10 years ago for too much money. I mean, they're a train wreck. So I have no doubt that we'd be able to work something out with them and get him at a reasonable amount of money. But I do think, going back to what we said earlier about Ayuk, I do think that there's some validity in us needing to pay for somebody. Do you know what I mean? You still got Pickens on a rookie deal. I think, we've got guys coming up at the end of their contract this year that are going to need new contracts like Freiermuth. But I think we've got to start thinking ahead. We can't put everybody off until next year. So I do feel like there's some validity in trying to get somebody, whether it's like a Jahan Dotson or if it's somebody bigger that fills that wide receiver role. Do you know what I mean? That kind of settles that group down for a year and takes some of the pressure off.
I openly wonder if Pat is betting on himself and knows that if he signed a contract this year and has a big year, it's worth the risk for him to say.
I believe it. If he's smart, I believe it, because I think he's going to thrive in Arthur Smith's offense, and so I think by all accounts, to me, that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? He's a very confident young man. He's very talented. And I think he finally feels like, for the first time since Ben left, like, okay, this fits Pat. This is good for Pat.
Mm-hmm. I agree with all that, except there's only one thing, the catastrophic word that Bob used. The only reason I don't agree with that, and it might have to do with the way I see football built from the trenches outward, because of the investment in our line, because of our offensive line, I legitimately feel like the injuries to certain key areas might not be as damaging as long as they're not on the offensive line. Because what did Tom Brady show? You keep a quarterback upright, I will make my receivers better than they are. Tom Brady consistently had no-name receivers that he made better. It wasn't until later in the Randy Moss years and all that he had those guys. I mean, Tim Brown. Who remembers Tim Brown?
I forget, Zach. Is Tom Brady playing quarterback for Pittsburgh this year?
Weirdly enough, he is.
Even anybody a little bit like Tom Brady. Tom Brady
I'm saying, I truly believe if you can keep the majority of starting quarterbacks in the NFL consistently upright, they do their job. What differs the great quarterbacks from the okay ones is when stuff breaks down, what kind of muscle memory happens. But if, let's say, George Pickens does go down, and we need someone like John Dotson to step in, I think being able to lean on the offensive line, switching to maybe leaning on the running game a little more, meaning get both of our backs get more excited. I don't see any negative from that happening, and allowing the quarterbacks to sit back, the offensive line has really made me feel a lot more comfortable with depth as far as the playmakers go.
Right, Zach. But if you go as is, okay, and we don't get anybody else, and Pickens is so far above everything else we have, and I'm going to use Russell Wilson specifically as an example, because he had an elite wide receiver tandem in Seattle. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He went to Denver with Jerry Jeudy, who, thank God he's in Cleveland. We need another guy there who can drop the ball. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. What happened to Russell Wilson's career? Sean Payton couldn't save it. I'm sorry, those wide receivers were terrible. And yes, Russell Wilson bears some blame. Sean Payton bears some blame. But I said it from the beginning, and people thought it was crazy. The moment Russell Wilson went to Denver, and I think this is exactly why Aaron Rodgers did not go to Denver. Those wide receivers were not up to par. And that is what our offense would look like without George Pickens this year, unless we go get a bona fide receiver, like LeeAnn said, Ayuk, or pay for somebody.
Interesting. Okay. Zach,
what about I started out at Amari Cooper.
Zach started out. He did Amari Cooper. That was it.
Yeah.
So what about you, Ray? Who are we bringing in?
I'm not bringing anybody, because, again, right now with me, I feel that of who we have in-house, let's develop them into.
Okay.
I appreciate that, because, like I said, I'm just playing. I'm a broken record. I have to, and until we're so far removed from it, it's not going to impact the Canada of it all. There's fallout involved. We saw all these players in a broken, horrible system for so long.
I do think a lot of people are forgetting about Roman Wilson too. When you hear a lot of these insiders talk about it, they do mention consistently how impressed the Steelers have been with Roman Wilson, how much of a steal they feel like he was, and that they expect him to have a big impact on the offense this year. And I feel like every time I start talking about the wide receiver room, I forget about him. And then I have to go, oh, yeah, that's right, he's there too, So, I mean, maybe they do feel, maybe what they said about who they have is good enough is somewhat true.
Let me ask you this question right here. Rapid fire question to all of you. Is it yes or no? Rapid fire. If the Steelers in the first 9 games, if they go 7-2, is the stench of Canada gone? Yes or no?
Depends what kind of 7-2 it is.
7-2. Is the stench
averaging 10? If we're averaging 13 points a game and we're winning 13-10 and they're all one-score games, the offense is still terrible. So no, I would say it's not so much the stench. It's the stench of Mike Tomlin's offense, because Remember what we said last week on that? I said you would know if Mike Tomlin, if it's true that he has his hands on Arthur Smith's offense. And if we stink on offense, I blame Tomlin.
I think if we see the offense come out and look diversified and look like they're commanding the field, and I'm not saying they have to come out and be putting up 45 points a game or something crazy, but look like they know what they're doing. I think that we would shake off the stench of Matt Canada in a game or two if we saw that. I really do. I think that it would immediately shake off all the old negative feelings. While the PTSD might still come back to haunt us in our nightmares, I do feel like for game time, some of that anxiety would come down.
I remember how I felt. I think it was the first or second pass in the game after we fired Matt Canada. It was a pass down the middle to Freiermuth, and like my heart lifted.
Yeah,
a whole game was that.
Kenny. That was Kenny. One game after Canada.
Yeah.
And it was Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
So
and it was still Matt Canada's stuff, still his playbook.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So to me, I think that we already got a little taste of how good it could be.
Yes. Yeah. So Ray, I think we don't even need 7-2. We could be 1-0, and everyone's like, this is a different. And Bob, even if it is 13-10, we could do that. And if it's in the right way, where it happens, because football is football, but we're going to know very, very, very quickly how different this football team is.
I think you'll know if teams come out and stack the box. If we go out in the first game and the box is stacked, and we go 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8, incomplete pass.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's different.
Yeah.
If we come out, they stack the box, first play is play action over the top. Okay, now we're playing football.
Okay, it's June 21st. I'm going to remember this. So it's in my brain. Okay.
June 20th.
21st.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
Technically, people will be watching this on the 21st.
Oh, okay.
We're time travelers.
Yeah. All right. Oh gosh, this is.
I said this has been a great episode, guys.
Been good.
Yeah.
Hey, just a quick shout out to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast that is airing tomorrow morning. I'm a guest on it, so if you feel like tuning in, go right ahead.
Give it a watch.
You too.
For those of you that are watching right now, we ask you to please like, share, subscribe to the podcast. Go and follow us on social media. We're on all platforms, and just really it helps us out. It helps out the YouTube algorithm. If you like the podcast and subscribe to it, it helps it show up for more Steeler fans, and we appreciate that.
And let us know. We put out shorts if you want to see, if you like a certain type of short and you want to see more of that. If you like us talking about a certain subject and you want us to see more of that. If you don't like us talking about something and you're like, hey, stop talking about A-word. All your comments.
Go, Bob.
And if you don't, we're going to get mad. We will be real mad and real disappointed. Yes.
Yes.
Guys, one last thing, two last things. One, I want to give a shout out to Jonathan Harrison, our newest viewer of the podcast here. Jonathan, I hope you enjoy it. And I have some sad news. A good friend of mine who I went to high school with, her name is Paula Allen. She is a diehard Steeler fan, and she and I, we go back and forth. We talk about Steeler football. And again, she passed away last week. And so she, at the age of 50, she was 50.
That's so young.
Yes.
Sky look a little
I'm
more
so
black
sorry,
and gold.
Ray.
So my condolences go out to the family, and again, just pray for the family.
Yeah.
So guys, again, thank you very much. Another episode's in the books. We'll be back next week with more Steeler talk. You all take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.